I rushed to St. Mark's Chapel, heart pounding as I saw the heavy oak doors sealed shut. They should have been open for mourners to say goodbye to Mom and Dad. Instead, they were locked from inside. "Valerie!" I shouted, pounding against the wood. "Open the door." Through the stained glass windows, I could see my sister's silhouette. She turned toward my voice, looked directly at me, then deliberately turned away. The priest's voice echoed from within, beginning the funeral rite. Other mourners stared. Neighbors, family friends all witnessing my humiliation. Some looked confused, others embarrassed. I pressed my face against the cold glass, watching as the ceremony continued without me. Valerie sat in the front row, playing the grieving daughter perfectly while I stood outside in the rain, tears streaming down my face. This was my parents' funeral. How could she do this to me? The whispers grew louder as people noticed me standing outside. "Why isn't Benjamin inside? Something's not right here." I felt my cheeks burn with shame. These people had known me my whole life. The chapel doors suddenly swung open. Valerie emerged, her black dress pristine, makeup perfect. She walked straight toward me. "You're not welcome here," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is for family only." The words hit me like a physical blow. Family only? I was her brother. "Val, what are you doing? This is insane." "Security will remove you if you don't leave voluntarily," she interrupted. As she walked away, Aunt Saliva pressed a folded paper into my hand. Her eyes were wide with fear. "Not here," she whispered before hurrying inside. My hands shook as I unfolded the note. Aunt Saliva's handwriting was rushed. "They don't want you to know the truth about the will. Meet me at Miller's Diner tonight at 8. Come alone." The truth about the will? My parents had always promised Valerie and I would inherit everything equally. But if that were true, why was Valerie acting like I didn't exist? Why lock me out of their funeral? I looked up to see the hearse pulling away, followed by black cars. In the back window of the lead limousine, I caught sight of Valerie's face. She was looking directly at me, and she was smiling. Not the sad smile of a grieving daughter, but something else entirely. That smile told me everything. This wasn't about grief. This was deliberate. This was planned. And somehow, it was about money. The Ridgewood reception hall buzzed with quiet conversation. I stood outside, watching through windows as people shared memories of my parents. The doorman stepped in front of me. "Sorry, sir. Private event. Invitation only. I'm Benjamin Walsh. Those were my parents who died." He looked uncomfortable. "I have strict instructions. You're not on the list." I could see Valerie inside, working the room. When she saw me, her mask slipped for just a second. "Step aside," I said, pushing past him. Conversations died as people turned to stare. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Then I saw it. On the memorial table was a framed photograph of my parents. But the inscription below made my knees nearly buckle. "In loving memory of Valerie's devoted parents, Bill and Margaret Walsh." As if I had never existed. I stared at the photograph, reading the inscription over and over. Valerie's devoted parents. Not our parents. "There's been some mistake," I said loud enough for nearby mourners to hear. "There's no mistake." Valerie appeared beside me. "You were always a mistake, Ben. Mom and Dad just took too long to realize it." Several people gasped. Others looked away. "How can you say that? They loved us both." "They tolerated you," she interrupted. "There's a difference." I felt dizzy. This couldn't be the sister I'd grown up with. "Valerie, what's happened to you? What's this really about?" She started to respond, but suddenly missed her. Jacobson appeared at my elbow. He was an elderly man who'd known our parents for 30 years. "Benjamin," he said quietly. "Your mother left something for you." I hid it. Mr. Jacobson led me to the coat room. His hands trembled as he pulled out a sealed envelope. My mother's handwriting was unmistakable, "For Benjamin, open only if something happens to us." "She gave this to me 3 weeks before the accident," he whispered. My heart hammered as I tore open the envelope. Inside was a single sheet in Mom's careful handwriting. "My dearest Benjamin, if you're reading this, then they will try to silence you and erase you from our family. Don't let them. The truth is hidden where your father used to read his Sunday papers. You are loved more than you know. Mom." I read it twice, hands shaking. "They will try to silence you. They. Not just Valerie, but others too." A sudden commotion erupted from the main hall. Valerie was standing at the front of the room, tapping a knife against her champagne glass. "I have an important announcement about my parents' final wishes." All eyes turned to Valerie as she stood before the crowd. She looked every inch the grieving daughter. "My parents were wonderful people who worked hard their entire lives," she began. "I'm honored to tell you that they named me the sole beneficiary of their estate." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. But I felt like the floor was falling away. Sole beneficiary? That went against everything our parents had ever said. I stepped forward, pulling Mom's letter from my pocket. "That's not true. Mom left me this letter." But Valerie was faster. She lunged forward and snatched the letter before I could finish. In one swift motion, she tore it in half. "My brother is clearly struggling with grief," she announced. "He's become delusional. It's very sad, really." The crowd murmured sympathetically. Some looked at me with pity. "This is insane," I shouted. But the damage was done. The room fell into uncomfortable silence. I could feel dozens of pairs of eyes judging me. Then, from the back of the room, a voice spoke up. "I saw your mother sign 2 sets of papers before she died." Everyone turned. Mrs. Patel, our longtime neighbor, stood slowly from her chair. "2 sets," she repeated. "In late October, I saw her at the dining room table with 2 different lawyers. She signed 1 set of papers, then another." The room was dead silent. Valerie's face had gone pale. "Margaret called me that evening," Mrs. Patel continued. "She was worried about Benjamin. Said she'd made sure he'd be taken care of." "Mrs. Patel," Valerie's voice was sharp now. "I think your memory might be." "My memory is fine, dear," Mrs. Patel interrupted firmly. Valerie's hands clenched into fists. "You need to stay out of family business." But the seed of doubt had been planted. The crowd began whispering among themselves. I could see doubt spreading across faces that had just accepted Valerie's story. 2 wills. 2 lawyers. Valerie must have realized she was losing control. Her face twisted with fury as she signaled to someone across the room. A man in an expensive suit appeared at her side. "We're leaving," she announced loudly. She swept toward the exit. But I wasn't about to let her escape. "Wait," I called, pushing through the crowd. "If there's another will, where is it?" But Valerie was already through the door. I chased after her, bursting into the parking lot just in time to see her Mercedes speed away. I stood there, breathing hard, feeling helpless. Then I heard footsteps behind me. "Ben." I turned to find my childhood friend Seth approaching. He reached into his jacket. "Your dad gave me this the week before he died," he said, pressing a flash drive into my palm. Back at my apartment, I sat at my desk, staring at the flash drive. My hands trembled as I inserted it into my laptop. The drive contained a single video file. I double-clicked it, and my father's face filled the screen. He looked tired, and there was fear in his eyes. Benjamin, his recorded voice said, if you're watching this, then something has happened to your mother and me, and Valerie has likely tried to cut you out completely. My heart stopped. He'd known this would happen. Everything your mother and I worked for was meant for both of you. Equal shares. But Valerie has been manipulating situations, pressuring us to change the will. She's gotten involved with some dangerous people who... The video suddenly cut off mid-sentence. The screen went black. I frantically clicked on the file, but an error message popped up, file corrupted. Portions of this video have been permanently deleted. Someone had tampered with Dad's final message. I called Seth immediately. He arrived within an hour, and we examined the corrupted video file. Seth worked in IT and knew computer forensics. This is weird, he said, scrolling through the file's metadata. The video was altered 3 days after your parents' funeral. But the flash drive was with you the whole time. Yeah, but see this digital signature embedded in the corruption code? Whoever deleted portions left their mark. He ran the signature through an analysis program. After a few minutes, his face went pale. Ben, you need to see this. The program had identified the digital signature. It belonged to Valerie's computer. How is that possible? I asked. If she had remote access to my computer, or intercepted the file. Ben, your sister is more tech-savvy than we realized. Or she's working with someone who is. I felt cold dread settling in my stomach. This was about covering up evidence. Can you restore the original video? Seth was already typing. Maybe. Give me some time. 3 hours later, Seth called with excitement in his voice. I got it, he said. You can see and hear your father's complete message. I rushed back to his apartment. We sat together as the restored video played. Dad's face appeared again, but this time the message continued. She's gotten involved with some dangerous people who convinced her that she deserves everything, Dad said. They've filled her head with ideas about being the true heir, about how you were adopted. My blood ran cold. Adopted? That was impossible. Of course, that's nonsense, Dad continued. You're our biological son. But these people have convinced Valerie that eliminating you from the inheritance is her destiny. He leaned closer to the camera. The real will, the one that splits everything equally, is hidden in my office safe. Behind the bookshelf, combination is your mother's birthday. But Benjamin, don't trust the lawyers. Don't trust the police. They've been compromised. The video continued for another minute, with Dad explaining that he'd suspected their car had been tampered with. I had to get to that safe. The next morning, I received a text from Valerie, meet me at Corner Cafe on Main Street. 11 a.m. Come alone. I stared at the message. Why did she want to meet? Against my better judgment, I went. The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived. Valerie sat in a corner booth. She looked different, older, harder. Sit down, Ben, she said without looking up. I slid into the booth across from her. Val, we need to talk about. About what? About your little investigation? She finally looked at me, and her eyes were cold. About how you've been snooping around, making accusations. A chill ran down my spine. How do you know what I've been doing? She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I know you visited Seth yesterday. I know you restored Dad's video. I know you called Mrs. Patel this morning. I felt trapped. You're having me followed. I'm protecting our family's interests, she said calmly. Valerie's voice dropped to a whisper, and she glanced around the nearly empty cafe before speaking. Mom and Dad were going to ruin everything, she said. The business, the investments, the property, they were going to split it all up and destroy what took them decades to build. By giving me half? That's destroying it. You don't understand business like I do. You've never understood what it takes to maintain wealth, to grow it. I stared at her. People like me, you mean? People like you, she confirmed. Do you know what you would have done with your half of Dad's company? Sold it off. You've never shown any interest in the family business. Her words stung because there was truth in them. I had chosen a different path. So you decided to take everything for yourself? I decided to save our family's legacy, she said. And yes, that required difficult decisions. Something in her tone made my blood run cold. What kind of difficult decisions? She was quiet for a long moment. The night before they died, I went to their house. I had keys. They were already asleep. I sat in stunned silence, processing what Valerie had just confessed. Valerie, I said slowly, what happened after Dad found you? She wouldn't meet my eyes. Nothing happened. We argued. I left. End of story. But something in her voice told me there was more. The next morning, their car crashed, I said. Brake failure, the police report said. Mechanical malfunction. Yes. Tragic accident. Except it wasn't an accident, was it? Her head snapped up, eyes flashing. Don't you dare accuse me of. I'm not accusing you of anything, I interrupted. I'm asking you to tell me the truth. Did you kill our parents? For a moment, the cafe was completely silent. Valerie stared at me with an expression I couldn't read. You really want to know? She whispered. I nodded, though part of me was terrified. I didn't kill them, Ben. But I didn't stop it from happening either. My world tilted. What does that mean? It means I wasn't working alone. There are people who had as much to gain from Mom and Dad's death as I did. She stood up, leaving money on the table. Walk away, she said. Don't dig any deeper. That night, I couldn't sleep. Valerie's confession echoed in my mind. She hadn't killed our parents directly, but she'd been part of the conspiracy. I had to get to Dad's safe before Valerie realized I knew about it. The combination was Mom's birthday, August 15, 1962. At 2 a.m., I drove to my childhood home. Valerie had inherited the house, but she'd been staying at her downtown apartment. The place should be empty. I parked 2 blocks away and walked through the shadows to the backyard. Using the spare key hidden under the garden gnome, I let myself in through the kitchen door. The house felt different in the darkness. Colder. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. Dad's office was at the back of the house. I slipped inside and used my phone's flashlight to navigate to the bookshelf. Behind his favorite mystery novels, I found the hidden panel that opened to reveal a small safe. My fingers shook as I entered Mom's birthday, August 15, 62. The safe clicked open. Inside were documents, a jewelry box, and a brass key. I grabbed everything, stuffing the papers into my jacket. But as I prepared to leave, I heard a car door slamming outside. Valerie was home. Panic flooded through me as I heard the front door open. Valerie's heels clicked against the hardwood floor. She was moving purposefully toward Dad's office. I grabbed the documents and key from the safe, shoving them into my jacket. Just as Valerie's hand touched the door handle, I dove behind Dad's large desk. The door swung open and the lights came on. Through the gap between the desk and wall, I could see Valerie's legs as she walked directly to the bookshelf. I know you're in here, Ben, she said calmly. Seth called to warn me that you'd left your apartment. Very loyal friend you have there. Seth had betrayed me? My heart sank. Actually, Seth has been keeping me informed about your activities for the past week. I heard her opening the safe. A moment later, she cursed violently. Where are they? She demanded. I had maybe 10 seconds before she searched the room. While she was distracted by the empty safe, I bolted from behind the desk toward the door. "Ben," she shouted. I ran through the house, heading for the kitchen. Behind me, Valerie gave chase. I burst through the back door and into the night, running toward the fence. As I reached it, I heard Valerie shouting into her phone. "He has the documents. Find him." I spent the rest of the night in a 24-hour diner, trying to make sense of the documents from Dad's safe. Most were legal papers, property deeds, investment records, business contracts. But there was also a bank key. The brass key was small but heavy, with First National Bank, Private Vault 247, engraved on it. Dad had a private bank vault. Whatever was in there, he'd kept it separate from everything else. When the bank opened at 9 a.m., I was waiting outside. The vault was in the basement level, accessible only with the key and proper identification. The bank manager, Mrs. Foster, led me down a narrow hallway. "Your father was very specific about this vault," she said. "Only you and your mother were authorized to access it. Never your sister." That detail hit me like a punch. Dad had deliberately excluded Valerie. Mrs. Foster used her master key along with mine to open the heavy metal door. Inside was a small room with a table and a filing cabinet. The cabinet contained 3 things. A handwritten will dated 1 week before my parents died, a thick leather journal, and a USB drive labeled "Insurance." The will was crystal clear. It split all assets equally between Valerie and me, with one crucial exception: if either of us was involved in our parents' deaths, their entire inheritance would go to charity. The journal's final entry was dated the day before my parents died. "Valerie came to the house tonight. She wasn't alone. 2 men waited in a car while she searched my office. When I confronted her, she said this was my last chance to do the right thing and sign over everything to her. She said the men outside were insurance that I'd make the right choice. I told her I'd rather die than let her destroy what Margaret and I built. She said that could be arranged. I believe my daughter is planning to kill me and her mother. I've documented everything and hidden copies of the real will. If something happens to us, Benjamin will inherit everything, and Valerie will face justice." I flipped through earlier entries, finding months of documentation. Phone calls threatening the business. Mysterious men following my parents. Pressure from people Dad clearly feared. The USB drive contained financial records showing large payments to people with criminal backgrounds. Payments authorized by Valerie from her personal accounts. She'd hired killers. I had everything I needed to prove her guilt. But as I prepared to leave, Mrs. Foster intercepted me. "Mr. Walsh," she said urgently, "there are men outside asking about you. They don't look like police." Through the bank's windows, I could see 2 large men in dark suits stationed by the entrance. I was trapped. "I need to contest a will," I told the courthouse clerk. "And I have evidence of murder." The clerk's eyes widened as I explained the situation. Within an hour, I was sitting across from Judge Maria, laying out everything I'd discovered. The hidden will, Dad's journal, the financial records showing Valerie's payments. Judge Maria nodded grimly. "I've had suspicions about Morris for some time." She picked up her phone. "I'm calling the state attorney general's office." 2 hours later, I was giving my statement to Detective Lisa Chong from the state level. "We've been building a case against Detective Morris for months," she told me. "Your evidence could be exactly what we need." But then her phone rang. After a brief conversation, her face darkened. "Mr. Walsh, I have bad news. Your sister just filed a restraining order against you and had you committed for psychiatric evaluation." My heart sank. She's trying to discredit me before I can expose her. I couldn't go home, couldn't go to friends, couldn't check into a hotel without risking arrest. So I drove to the woods behind my childhood home and waited. If Valerie wanted to play games with psychiatric holds and restraining orders, I'd force her hand differently. At midnight, I called her cell phone. "Hello, Val. We need to talk." "Ben." Her voice was sharp with surprise. "Where are you?" "The police are looking for." "I know. Your police friends." Very convenient how Detective Morris was so quick to sign that commitment order. Silence on the line. "I have Dad's journal, Val. All of it. Every entry where he documented your threats, your criminal associates, the payments you made to have them killed. You're delusional, Ben. That's why you need help." August 15, 1962. Mom's birthday. Dad's safe combination. He left everything for me to find, including the real will that gives you nothing if you're involved in their deaths. Another long silence. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Colder. "What do you want?" "Justice. A confession. The names of everyone who helped you." She laughed bitterly. "You think I'm going to confess to murder over the phone?" "No. In person. Tomorrow night. The old warehouse on Industrial Road. Come alone, and we'll settle this." "And if I don't?" "Then tomorrow morning, copies of Dad's journal go to every newspaper and law enforcement agency in the state. Including the FBI. The next evening, I arrived at the warehouse early. Dad's old equipment storage facility had been empty since he retired, but I still had keys from my teenage years. I positioned myself in the office overlooking the main floor, with multiple exit routes planned. Detective Chang's number was programmed into my phone. At exactly 9 p.m., headlights swept across the parking lot. But instead of one car, I counted 3 vehicles. Valerie hadn't come alone. She walked through the main entrance with 2 men flanking her, the same men from the bank. Behind them came Detective Morris himself. "Ben." Valerie called out. "Let's get this over with." I stayed hidden in the office, using my phone to record everything. "I know you're here," she continued, walking to the center of the warehouse floor. "You want a confession? Fine. I'll give you a confession." She looked directly up at the office where I was hiding. "Yes, I had them killed. Our parents were stubborn, selfish people who couldn't see the bigger picture." My heart pounded as I recorded her words. "And yes, Detective Morris has been very helpful in covering up loose ends. Did you really think you could fight all of us?" One of her associates was moving toward the stairs. I had to move. That's when I heard the sirens. The warehouse erupted in chaos as police cars surrounded the building. But these weren't Detective Morris's corrupt local cops, these were state police, FBI agents, and Detective Chang's anti-corruption task force. Valerie spun around in confusion as officers poured through every entrance. Her associates reached for weapons, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. "This is Detective Chang, State Attorney General's office. Everyone on the ground now." I emerged from my hiding spot, hands raised, as Chang approached me. "You got it all?" I asked. She nodded grimly. "Every word. Your sister just confessed to murder and conspiracy in front of a dozen law enforcement officers." Valerie was screaming as they put her in handcuffs. "This is a setup. He's crazy." But her protests fell on deaf ears. Detective Morris was also in custody, along with both of her criminal associates. "How did you know to be here?" I asked Chang. "When you described the psychiatric hold and Morris's involvement, we realized this was bigger than just your parents' murder. We've been investigating a corruption ring. Your case gave us the evidence we needed." She gestured toward the entrance where more officers were escorting additional suspects inside. "We picked up the judge who signed your commitment order, 2 other police officers, and a psychiatric hospital administrator. As Valerie was led past me, she stopped and looked directly into my eyes. "You think this is over?" she hissed. "There are people involved that you don't know about." The trial lasted 3 months. Valerie's conspiracy had been even more extensive than I'd realized. The corruption network included Detective Morris, a county judge, several police officers, a hospital administrator, and even a prosecutor. The evidence was overwhelming. Dad's journal, the financial records showing Valerie's payments to criminals, her recorded confession at the warehouse, and testimony from dozens of witnesses painted a picture of a carefully orchestrated murder plot. Valerie took the stand in her own defense, trying to claim she'd been coerced by the criminal associates. But the financial records showed she'd initiated the contacts and made the payments before they'd ever threatened her. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," the prosecutor said in her closing argument, "this case is about greed masquerading as family loyalty. The defendant didn't just inherit her parents' money, she murdered them for it." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. First-degree murder, conspiracy, fraud, and racketeering. Valerie was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Detective Morris received 25 years. The other conspirators received sentences ranging from 10 to 15 years. But even with justice served, I couldn't shake Valerie's final threat. "There are people involved that you don't know about. That's why I decided to sell our parents' house and most of the business assets. I kept enough to live comfortably but gave the majority to charity. I moved across the country, started a new job, began rebuilding my life under a different name. 5 years later, I was living in Portland under my new identity when I received a package with no return address. Inside was a photograph and a letter. The photograph showed my parents at their wedding, young and hopeful. On the back, in Mom's handwriting, "For Benjamin, remember that love is stronger than hate, and truth always wins in the end." The letter was from Mrs. Foster, the bank manager. "Dear Benjamin, I hope this finds you well and safe. Your parents would be proud of the courage you showed in seeking justice for their deaths. I wanted you to know that Valerie tried to have me killed 2 weeks after her arrest. The attempt failed, and her accomplice is now in prison as well. Detective Chong tells me this was likely her final effort to eliminate witnesses. You were right to disappear and start over. The corruption you uncovered went deeper than anyone imagined, and there may still be people out there who blame you for exposing it. But I want you to remember something your father told me the last time I spoke with him. He said that you were the strongest person he knew, even if you didn't realize it yourself. He said that if anything ever happened to him and your mother, you'd find a way to make things right. He was correct." I set the letter aside and looked out at the Portland skyline. Somewhere out there, Valerie was serving her life sentence. The corrupt officials were in prison. The criminal network had been dismantled. My parents were gone, but their killers had faced justice. Sometimes the only way to honor the dead is to make sure the living pay for their crimes. I kept Mom's photograph on my desk as a reminder, not of what I'd lost, but of what I'd fought to preserve. Truth. Justice. And the kind of love that even death can't destroy.